Okay, everybody, so I took too long on video number one. Not surprising. So this is just part two. Let me just finish up talking about the tiers and then law enforcement numbers, and we'll be done for this topic. So what I was saying about the tier measurements is that governments that fully comply with the requirements of the TVPA are placed on tier 1, on the tier 1 list. It's a relatively short list compared to tier 2 and the tier 2 special watch list. I'll put a link up on Blackboard so that you can see who is on each list. Tier 2 is a list of governments that are making significant efforts to meet the minimum standards of the TVPA. And then governments that do not fully comply with the minimum standards and are not making significant efforts to do so are placed on tier 3. Now, it is a 3-tier system, as I said, but there's actually one sort of in-between list that's called the tier 2 watch list. And the tier 2 watch list is made up of countries that are on tier 2, but that the TVPA should be putting a particular focus on. For example, when a country is on tier 2 now, but was on tier 3 in the previous watch list, they are considered to be on the special watch list, the tier 2 watch list. And in fact, countries that are tier 1 in the current report, but were tier 2 the year before, are also on the tier 2 watch list. And then there's a couple of extra scenarios as well when countries go on the tier 2 watch list. I'm going to read these to you. When the absolute number of victims of severe forms of trafficking is very significant or is significantly increasing. And then also when there is failure to provide evidence of increasing efforts to combat severe forms of trafficking in persons from the previous year, including increased investigations, prosecutions, and convictions of trafficking crimes, increased assistance to victims, and decreasing evidence of complicity in severe forms of trafficking by government officials. And lastly, when the determination that a country is making significant efforts to bring itself into compliance with the minimum standards was based on commitments by the country to take additional future steps over the coming years. They haven't done these things yet, but they make plans to do so. Those are the tiers. The countries on each tier obviously change from year to year, so I'll get a list of the most recent, most updated list of countries on the list and put that link up in the course documents section of Blackboard, where you should be going all the time to see what's going on. One last set of numbers that I wanted to talk about has to do with law enforcement. As anybody who's in justice studies will know, one of the main ways that we measure crime here in the United States is using the UCR, the Uniform Crime Reports, which measures police contacts on particular crimes only. But the key is that if a crime doesn't come to the attention of law enforcement, it doesn't get on the UCR. Certainly there's a whole lot of other things that don't get on the UCR as well, for limitations of recording. But the UCR is really about law enforcement activity with crime. There are other reports that measure crime differently. The NCVS, for example, measures victimization by going into people's homes and asking them about victimizations. As most of us should know, the NCVS shows much, much higher numbers of criminal activities than the UCR does, which makes sense because not all criminal activity goes to the police. Something might happen to you at the hands of a family member and you don't want to tell anybody about it. You might be ashamed about something that happened. Rape victims really most often don't go to the police because they're ashamed or they're afraid. Also, there are things like that are called victimless crimes, like drug use and prostitution and gambling, where no one is hurt. So nobody goes to the police for it. Also, there are things that happen that police often don't find out about. White-collar crimes, for example, are often gone undetected, so that the victimization report gets a little bit more to crimes. It tries to uncover what's called the dark figure of crime, which is the number of crimes that go undetected by police. Now, given that knowledge, the numbers on prosecutions and convictions on trafficking should be taken with that really big, huge grain of salt. That there's no way that these numbers accurately represent the number of trafficking violations that are going on. But at least we can see how many convictions and prosecutions are going on. So in 2003, there were 7,992 prosecutions of trafficking, and 2,815 convictions. We have this information because the TVPA, in fact, the reauthorization of the TVPA required data to be collected about data on trafficking investigations, prosecutions, convictions, and sentences. That if a country was going to be in compliance with the TVPA, in fact the TVPRA, which is the reauthorization, they had to require that information. They had to provide that information. So in 2004, that data started to be collected. So what we found, that was 2003, just under 8,000 prosecutions and just under 3,000 convictions. Then by 2007, the number of prosecutions was a little bit lower, 5,682. 490 of those are related to labor trafficking situations and cases. And convictions, there were 3,427 convictions. 326 of those were labor trafficking. So what we're noticing is the number of prosecutions has gone down, not insignificantly, but the number of convictions has gone up slightly. So important to realize that as these reauthorizations of the TVPA happen, more data are required to be collected, or they're tweaking the type of data that's useful. Okay? So as we continue through this semester, I'd like you to pay attention to numbers. Where are the numbers coming from? Who's collecting these numbers? Why should we trust these numbers? What do these numbers actually mean? Do they mean that somebody happened to be collecting something in a particular way that doesn't really mean what they say it means, or are people being more systematic and careful about it? Is it something that's collected internationally or just nationally? Pay attention to numbers. There's a reason that people talk about statistics as lies, damn lies, and statistics, because it is very easy to lie with statistics. You have to watch how people use their language and be very critical of what the numbers actually mean, okay? Especially with trafficking, where so much happens underground and without our knowledge, and where the definitions of things can be very, very slippery. What somebody might call trafficking, somebody else might call prostitution. In fact, a person involved in it may not call themselves a trafficked person. So it's all very slippery, and it can be very frustrating, but it's important to bring a critical eye to it. Okay? So enjoy your reading. Our next topic, let me pull up my syllabus here. You should be looking at your syllabus all the time. So we've just covered measurement. How do we know what we know? Our next class is about, it's about globalization and push and pull factors. A solid amount of reading is from the Kempadu book. Totally different way of looking at this topic in the Kempadu book from the BNS book. So be ready to flip your mind a little bit. And then there's a Milanovic article about globalization that's in the course documents folder. There are also some cool videos up in the course documents folder that you should also take a look at. All right, so get reading and stay warm. It's freezing out there. I went to go get the mail while the video was uploading for part 1. It's freezing. I got some good Christmas cards though, so yay. All right, everybody. See you soon.